My mom begged me to come home for the holidays. She cried on the phone saying, "Please. I just want the family together again." After a 10-hour flight, I arrived exhausted, hopeful, ready to reconnect. But the moment she opened the door, no hug, no smile, just a command that hit harder than jet lag. "You'll babysit your brother's kids. We're leaving for a family vacation." They laughed, assuming I'd just obey. But I wasn't the same pushover they remembered. So I smiled, and said one sentence that turned their holiday plan into absolute chaos. "Stay with us. This amazing story will leave you speechless." Before we get started, hit like, share, and subscribe, and drop your location in the comments. After 10 hours in the air, 3 hours of airport lines, and 1 hour of dragging my suitcase across a frozen parking lot, all I wanted was warmth, literal and emotional. My mom had been begging me for weeks, calling nonstop, leaving voicemails with her voice cracking, saying things like, "Honey, the holidays don't feel right without you. Please, just come home." I imagined stepping into the house I grew up in, smelling cinnamon candles, hearing her excited footsteps rushing toward me, maybe even feeling her arms wrap around me like they used to when I was little. I pictured the kind of welcome you see in those heartwarming airport videos online. I should have known better. When the door finally swung open, it wasn't warmth that greeted me. It was the cold December air sneaking past my mom's shoulder, and the even colder look on her face. No hug. No smile. Not even a hi. She just glanced at my suitcase like it annoyed her. "You're finally here," she said flatly. "Come in. We don't have time to waste." That wasn't the greeting I'd imagined during the long flight. I tried to shake it off. Maybe she was stressed, busy, distracted. I forced a smile anyway, stepping inside as I pulled off my coat. "Hi, Mom. Merry Christmas. I missed you." She didn't respond. Not a word. Instead, she grabbed the handle of my suitcase, rolled it toward the hallway, and called over her shoulder, "Your brother and the kids are already here. Everyone's in the living room." I paused mid-step. Already here? They weren't supposed to arrive until tomorrow. Her tone made something inside me tighten, but I followed her anyway, trying to stay hopeful. It had been months since I'd seen everyone. Maybe the awkwardness was just temporary. But the moment I walked into the living room, the noise hit me first. Kids screaming, toys crashing, the TV blaring. Then my brother looked up, smirked, and said, "Wow, she actually came. Not hi. Not good to see you." Just that. Their kids were running wild, pillows on the floor, juice spilled on the rug. My sister-in-law barely looked up from her phone. Mom didn't introduce anyone, didn't acknowledge my exhaustion, didn't ask about my flight. She just clapped her hands once and said, "Good. You're all here. Let's get to it." "To what?" I asked, confused. She simply turned toward me, her expression tightening into something I couldn't quite read. And in that moment, before she even said the words, I felt it. Something was very, very wrong. Before I could sit down or take off my shoes, Mom walked straight into the middle of the chaotic living room, clapped her hands again, and said loudly, "All right, we don't have much time, so let's go over everything now." I stood there blinking, still half jet-lagged, wondering if she was talking to me. But she didn't hesitate, didn't soften her tone, didn't even breathe before dropping the sentence that knocked the air right out of me. "You'll be babysitting your brother's kids this week. We're leaving early tomorrow for a family trip." My smile froze. "Wait, what?" She said it like it was obvious. Like this was the plan all along. Like dragging myself across the country was simply part of her scheduling. My brother snorted from the couch, not even bothering to hide his amusement. "Yes, sis. Mom said you were coming to help out." Perfect timing, honestly. One of the kids wiped their nose on their sleeve, then ran over and grabbed my leg like I was already hired help. I gently loosened their hand, forcing a calm tone. "I didn't come here to babysit. I came because you," I looked at Mom, trying to keep my voice steady, "you said you needed family time." Mom waved her hand like I was being dramatic. "Family time doesn't mean everyone sitting around the house. We planned this trip months ago. You'll stay with the kids. They love you." "I haven't even unpacked," I murmured. "You don't need to," she replied. "Your room is basically their playroom now. You'll sleep on the pullout. Anyway, they're easy. Just feed them, bathe them, keep them from killing each other. Oh, and no screen time. It makes them hyper." I stared at her, my exhaustion turning into disbelief. "Mom, you asked me to fly home. You said you missed me." She finally looked at me just long enough to say something that felt like a slap. "Well, yes. But we also needed someone responsible here. And you're the only one without kids or a real schedule, so it makes sense. A real schedule. A real life. A real anything. That's how she saw me. My brother laughed again, lifting his son into the air. Don't wipe your snot on her, kids, he joked loudly. She's still new to the whole caretaker thing. Everyone laughed except me. I stood there in the middle of the noise, feeling small, invisible, and unbelievably stupid for thinking this trip was about love. Mom clapped one last time. Good. Now that you know your role, we can finish packing. My role. Not daughter. Not guest. Not family. Just the babysitter. And that's when something inside me started to crack. I followed Mom into the kitchen, hoping, naively, that maybe she'd explain herself once we were alone. Maybe she'd realize how insane her request sounded. Maybe she'd even apologize. But the moment we stepped in, she opened a drawer, tossed a stack of printed schedules onto the counter and said, "These are the kids' routines. Please don't mess them up." Printed routines. Plural. Detailed like military orders. She didn't even look up as she spoke. She just kept organizing, shuffling papers, checking items off a list. I stood across from her, gripping the edge of the counter, trying to understand how my own mother could see me as nothing more than staff. "Mom," I said quietly, "you could have told me. You didn't need to trick me into coming home." She sighed, annoyed. "You always exaggerate. Nobody tricked you. You're part of this family. Families help each other." Funny how help each other in this house always meant me helping everyone else. Her words triggered something deep, a memory I hadn't thought about in years. I was 10. My brother was 13. He'd spilled juice on the carpet, a giant purple stain spreading like a bruise. Mom stormed in and immediately snapped at me to clean it. I remember pointing at my brother, confused. "But he spilled it." She didn't blink. "Yes, but you're better at cleaning. Don't argue." And that was that. Or the time in high school when my brother forgot his English project. Mom left work, drove an hour to bring him his materials, then grounded me because I didn't remind him. Or the holidays when I cooked, cleaned, set the table, washed the dishes, while he sat on the couch telling jokes and collecting praise for bringing the family together. Some families have a golden child. Some have a scapegoat. I was the invisible worker, good enough to depend on but not important enough to appreciate. As Mom organized spices that didn't need organizing, she said, "Honestly, sweetie, this is the perfect arrangement. You don't have kids, you don't have a demanding job, and you're naturally responsible. Your brother has so much on his plate, poor thing." Poor thing. The man whose kids were currently screaming because they found a hammer in the garage. The man who couldn't keep a job for more than 6 months because people didn't understand his creativity. The man who still called Mom to ask how to boil pasta. I took a slow breath, letting all of it settle inside me. The years of being the dependable one, the fixer, the cleaner, the problem solver. All the roles they expected me to play. All the roles I never agreed to. And for the first time I wondered what would happen if I simply stopped playing them. The moment I stepped back into the living room, I realized things had gotten worse. Much worse. One of the kids was standing on the coffee table, stomping like it was a stage. Another was dragging a marker across the wall in long, triumphant swirls of blue ink. A third had somehow found the TV remote and was flipping channels so fast the screen looked like a strobe light. My sister-in-law, Leah, sat cross-legged on the couch scrolling her phone, completely unfazed. She didn't look up even when a toy truck skidded across the floor and smacked into her ankle. "They're energetic today," she murmured, never breaking eye contact with whatever video she was watching. "Energetic." I echoed. "Your son just ate part of a sticker." He shrugged. "He'll be fine." My brother, meanwhile, was laughing like this was all part of some adorable sitcom. "Kids, right?" he said, nodding toward the chaos as if I should join in the fun. "They're a handful, but hey, that's why we're glad you're here. You've always had a calm vibe." A calm vibe. Translation: you're the responsible one. You'll handle it. Before I could respond, the kid on the coffee table leaped off and tackled his sister. She screamed, he screamed, Leah didn't move, and Mom walked in just in time to see me standing there, already exhausted from 30 seconds of observing the madness. Mom raised an eyebrow. "Why aren't you doing anything?" But before I could form a full sentence, one of the kids tugged on my sweater and shouted, "Auntie, he took my toy and he's lying and he said you're a boring adult." My brother burst out laughing. "He's not wrong. he said, ruffling his son's hair. I stared at him. Brian, they're drawing on the walls. He shrugged. Walls can be painted. Childhood can't. I actually felt my jaw drop. Mom nodded in agreement as if her grandson's graffiti masterpiece was a sign of genius. They're creative. Don't stifle that. Creative. Right. Just then a crash came from the dining room. All 5 of us turned to look. One of the kids had climbed onto a chair, reached the table centerpiece and smashed the glass bowl onto the floor. Mom sighed dramatically at me. Are you watching them or not? Watching them? I'd been in the room for 5 minutes, and somehow the destruction was now my responsibility. I took a slow breath, the kind that fills your chest before a storm. Because it hit me clearly in that moment. They didn't just want help. They expected obedience. To them I wasn't a guest. I wasn't family. I was the built-in babysitter they believed I'd always been. But something inside me, something that had been quiet for way too long, was finally waking up. When the last shard of the broken glass bowl had been swept into a dustpan, by me of course, Mom clapped her hands again like she was calling a meeting to order. Everyone gathered around the dining table except the kids, who were now sword-fighting with wrapping paper tubes. Mom unrolled a glossy brochure and smoothed it flat on the table. It was bright, colorful, and unmistakably expensive. White sand beaches, infinity pools, palm trees swaying in perfect resort symmetry. We'll be leaving at 6 a.m. sharp, she announced. So everyone needs to be ready early. I frowned. We. Mom nodded enthusiastically. Yes. All of us. Then she pointed directly at my brother, his wife, herself, and her husband. We're taking a holiday getaway. Much needed. Much deserved. I blinked slowly. So, everyone except me. She looked genuinely confused that I needed clarification. Well, yes. Someone has to stay with the kids, obviously. Obviously. Like the sun rising. Like bills existing. Like me being the default babysitter. I stared at her. Mom, you told me to come home because you missed me. You said you wanted us together for the holidays. She sighed, the way people sigh when they think the other person is being difficult. Yes, sweetie, and we're together now. But Brian booked this trip months ago. It's non-refundable. Brian casually popped a grape into his mouth. Besides, we figured you wouldn't mind. You've always been so great with kids. I didn't agree to babysit, I said. My sister-in-law finally looked up from her phone. Oh, come on. It's not a big deal. It's only 6 days. 6 days. My heart practically stopped. 6 days? You expect me to watch 3 kids alone for 6 days? Mom raised a finger. 5.5. We'll be back around noon on the 6th day. As if that half day was supposed to comfort me. And you won't need to worry about anything, she added. We stocked the fridge. There's laundry detergent. The kids sleep, eventually. My brother laughed again. Just keep them alive. They're great kids once you get used to them. A loud crash echoed from the hallway. One of the kids had knocked over a lamp. Mom didn't even flinch. She just looked at me like I should handle it. My hands tightened at my sides, a slow, burning realization settling in. They never invited me home for love. Not for connection. Not for family. Just for convenience. I wasn't part of their holiday plan. I was the plan. And for the first time I wondered what would happen if I stopped playing the role they wrote for me. I left the dining room before I said something I would regret. The air felt too heavy, the walls too small, the noise too loud. I escaped into the guest room, well, what used to be the guest room. Now it looked like a storage closet for toys, laundry baskets, and half-wrapped gifts. My suitcase sat awkwardly in the corner, untouched, like even it didn't belong there. I sat on the pull-out bed and breathed, counting slowly to 10. But the moment my heartbeat began to settle, I heard voices drifting down the hallway. My family wasn't exactly quiet. They never had been. And they weren't talking about holiday joy, or memories, or me. They were talking about why they actually needed me here. She won't say no, my brother said. His tone smug. Confident. She never does. I just hope she doesn't make this a big deal, Mom whispered. We really can't afford another sitter after what happened last time. Another sitter? I leaned forward, listening. Leah's voice chimed in, bored and blunt. Well, maybe if Brian hadn't gotten fired again we wouldn't need help. My brother scoffed. I didn't get fired. I told you, I quit because the environment was toxic. Toxic. Leah repeated. You were late 14 times in 1 month. Silence. A guilty silence. Mom quickly changed the subject. Anyway, we already spent too much on the trip. And the house repairs. And Brian's car. The truth hit me in a slow, cold wave. They weren't inviting me home because they missed me. They weren't thinking about family. They weren't lonely without me. They needed free labor because their finances were worse than they admitted. And I was the easy one. The responsible one. The uncomplicated one. The one who wouldn't argue. The one who wouldn't push back. The one who would drop everything, even her own life, to support them. As I always had. As their voices continued, something sharp twisted in my chest. She doesn't have responsibilities, Mom said. No kids, no demanding job. She has flexibility. Flexibility. As if my life was soft clay they could mold. Brian added, honestly, she should be grateful we flew her out. Plane tickets weren't cheap. My jaw tightened. Grateful? For being lured across the country under false pretenses and handed 3 kids like a chore list? Then Mom said the sentence that cut deepest. We raised her to be helpful. It's who she is. Helpful. Not loved. Not valued. Just useful. I sat there staring at the wall, feeling something inside me shift, click into place like a lock turning. They didn't invite me home for Christmas. They invited me home for convenience. And that realization changed everything. I stayed in that toy-filled guest room longer than I meant to. Not because I needed to rest, but because I needed to calm the storm forming inside me. I could feel it, years of being the good one, the yes one, the don't cause problems one, all starting to crumble. I'd spent my whole life swallowing my feelings, smoothing situations, carrying burdens that weren't mine. But hearing them talk about me like I was a tool, like a convenient appliance they could switch on when needed, something inside me snapped a little. Quietly. Silently. But unmistakably. Just then the door burst open without knocking, because privacy apparently didn't exist in this house. One of the kids sprinted in, climbed onto the bed and immediately started jumping. Hey, careful. I said, grabbing their arms before they launched themselves headfirst into the wall. My brother strolled in a second later, totally unfazed. Kids need freedom, he said lazily. Don't hover. They need supervision, I corrected, trying not to sound as irritated as I felt. He shrugged. Same thing. Look, Mom wants you in the kitchen. She's going over the babysitting schedule again. I forced a breath through my nose. Brian, did you or Mom ever think to ask me if I wanted to do this? He blinked like I was speaking another language. Why would you say no? You barely do anything where you live. And you love the kids. I stared at him. I live a full life, Brian. A real life. I work. I pay my own bills. I'm not sitting in a cave waiting for you all to summon me. He laughed. Actually laughed as if I'd just told a cute joke. Relax. It's not that deep. But it was that deep. Years deep. As he walked out, the kid tumbled off the bed and started crying. I knelt to help them, brushing hair from their face. I didn't blame the kids. They were innocent in all this. But their parents, my family, they had built their comfort on my silence. And they assumed automatically that silence was permanent. I wiped the child's tears, handed them a toy and walked out of the room, but something was different. My steps felt firmer. My heartbeat steadier. My mind clearer. Mom stood in the kitchen with her printed schedules, lecturing Leah and Brian about dietary restrictions and bedtime routines, as if any of them had followed any such routine ever. She turned to me the moment I entered. Finally. We need to finish going over your responsibilities. My responsibilities. Not an invitation. Not a request. A command. And that was it. That was the moment. I felt the crack inside me widen into a decision. I wasn't staying. I wasn't babysitting. I wasn't sacrificing myself again. But they had no idea the shift had already happened. Not yet. If my family had been paying attention, they would have noticed the difference in my eyes the moment I sat down at the kitchen table. But they weren't paying attention. They were too busy delegating my life for me. Mom was reviewing feeding times like she was training a new nanny. Leah was scrolling on her phone, chiming in only when something annoyed her. Brian kept tossing grapes in the air and catching them with his mouth. I looked at all of them, really looked, and something inside me locked into place. Fine. They wanted to treat me like help? Then I'd treat them like employers who didn't read the contract. Because starting now I wasn't playing their game. I smiled. Not a sarcastic smile. Not a bitter smile. But the calm, polite smile that hides a storm. Sure, I said sweetly, I can handle tomorrow morning. Mom beamed. Brian winked. Leah murmured thanks without looking up. None of them realized that was the exact moment they lost control. Because while they talked, I quietly slipped my phone into my lap and turned it face down as I typed. Step 1. Check available flights out of this freezing town. Step 2. Confirm that my return ticket was still eligible for a same-day change. Step 3. Make sure I had enough reward points for a last-minute hotel. Every option lit up green. Perfect. I stood, acting as if I needed water, and stepped into the hallway. My fingers flew across the screen as I confirmed and booked everything silently. No big gestures, no dramatic sighs. They wouldn't hear a single clue. A notification appeared. Heavy checkmark, your ticket has been changed. Departure. 6:45 a.m. 6:45. The same time they'd be packing their luggage into the car. The same time they assumed I'd be in pajamas wrangling kids and making breakfast. I slipped my phone into my pocket just as Mom called out, "Sweetie, don't wander off. We're not done yet." I walked back in calmly. "Oh, I'm here," I said, taking my seat. The schedules spread across the table suddenly looked funny. Like props in a play where the cast didn't realize the script had changed. They explained nap times, meal plans, discipline techniques they had never once used themselves. They were building a fantasy world where I would raise their kids for a week while they sipped cocktails in the sun. But inside, my plan was already unfolding. Quietly. Perfectly. Beautifully. They thought they were orchestrating the holiday. But I was orchestrating the twist. That evening felt like watching a play where every character was convinced they were brilliant. Except the audience already knew the ending. Mom bustled around the house with military purpose, folding laundry, labeling snack containers, writing reminder notes as if she were preparing a daycare center instead of abandoning her own grandchildren with someone who didn't agree to any of this. Leah packed loudly in the living room, tossing swimsuits and dresses into suitcases while complaining that she deserved a break from motherhood. Brian strutted around giving me advice on handling his kids, despite the fact that he had spent less than 10 minutes interacting with them all day. And the kids? They were overtired, overstimulated, and running horizontally across furniture like gremlins before midnight. I watched it all with a strange sort of calm. Maybe because for the first time in my life I wasn't following their script. I wasn't trying to fit in. I wasn't trying to be agreeable. My decision was already made. And the freedom of it felt powerful. Around 9 p.m. Mom knocked on the doorframe of the guest room, holding yet another list. "This one is their bedtime routine," she said. "It's very important." I glanced at it. There were 13 steps. 13. For kids she put to bed by yelling, "Lights out," from the hallway. I smiled politely. "Got it." She mistook my calmness for compliance. "Good," she said, relieved. "I knew we could count on you. Count on me. Depend on me. Lean on me without ever asking." That was the Caldwell family motto. After she left, I pulled out my phone and checked my flight again. 6:45 a.m. Everything was set. My suitcase was zipped, tucked behind the bed. I'd even arranged a ride to the airport in the morning. A quiet pre-scheduled pickup that wouldn't wake anyone. When I stepped back into the hallway, Brian was sipping soda, looking far too relaxed for someone about to dump his responsibilities onto another person. "We'll leave before sunrise," he said cheerfully. "Kids will still be asleep, so it'll be easy for you." "Easy? Sure." I nodded slowly. "Makes sense." The words tasted different now, not like defeat but like strategy. As the night wound down, the kids finally collapsed. Leah finished packing, Brian bragged about the resort, and Mom hovered over me with reminders until she ran out of them. By midnight the house went still. A calm before the storm they expected me to handle. A calm before the twist I was about to deliver. I lay on the pull-out bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling a quiet thrill rise in my chest. Tomorrow morning they'd wake up expecting control. They'd realize I wasn't theirs to command. Not anymore. The next morning the house buzzed with frantic vacation energy. Suitcases slapped against the floor, zippers hissed, kids whined, Leah yelled about sunscreen, and my brother was already wearing sunglasses indoors like he was starring in some tropical commercial. The only thing missing was calm, something this family had never been good at. I slipped quietly into the kitchen, fully dressed, backpack over my shoulder, my jacket folded neatly on a chair. Mom didn't notice. She was too busy shouting instructions over the chaos. Make sure they eat fruit with breakfast. The youngest likes oatmeal but only with honey. And remember, no juice before 9. She turned and shoved a bowl of cereal toward me. Here, you can start their breakfast while we load the car. Her tone wasn't a request. It was an order. A casual assumption that I was already on duty. I pushed the bowl back gently. Shilly. I'm not doing breakfast. She blinked, confused. What do you mean? I stood straighter, my voice calm. I'm not babysitting today. The room went silent. Even the kids paused mid-scream. Brian laughed first. Funny. Now seriously, the kids need to eat. I met his eyes. I'm serious. Leah finally looked up from her phone. Wait, what? I reached for my jacket and slipped it on. I'm leaving in about 10 minutes. I have a flight. Mom's jaw dropped, the color draining from her face. Ew, no. No, absolutely not. You can't leave. We're leaving. I know, I said simply. You're heading to your vacation. And I'm heading to mine. Brian's sunglasses slid down his nose. Hold on. You're joking, right? You can't just. I can, I said. And I am. Mom stepped closer, her voice trembling between anger and disbelief. You planned this? Behind our backs. I almost laughed. Behind your backs. I'd learned from the best. You told me to come home for family time, I said quietly. But what you really wanted was a nanny. And I'm not here to be used. Leah stared at me like I'd grown another head. But we already paid for the trip. That's not my problem, I replied. Neither are your kids. Brian's voice cracked, panicked. You can't just abandon us. Funny, I said. That's exactly what you were planning to do to your own children. The kids started arguing, the adults started yelling, but I stayed still, calm, like the eye of a storm. Mom's voice was barely a whisper. You're leaving? I nodded. Yes. For once in my life. I'm choosing myself. And the shock on their faces was worth every mile I'd flown. For a moment, the house was so quiet it felt unnatural, like the world itself had paused to listen. Mom stared at me with a look I had never seen before, something between disbelief and fear. Her hand, still holding a stack of folded napkins, trembled slightly. No, she whispered, barely audible. No way. You wouldn't. I held her gaze. I already did. Her eyes widened, shining with something raw and unfamiliar. Not sadness. Not concern. Control. She was losing control. Brian threw his hands up. Mom, talk to her. She can't just walk out. She has to stay, Leah added sharply. We need her here. The kids need her. Mom finally found her voice, though it shook at the edges. Sweetie, listen to me. We already booked everything. We can't cancel now. We're supposed to leave in. She checked her watch with shaking fingers. 20 minutes. I know, I said. And I hope you have a great trip. You're being unreasonable, she said, her tone rising. We raised you to be helpful. That word again. Helpful. A tool. An asset. A convenience. I took a step closer, speaking softly. You raised me to be silent. To sacrifice. To give up my plans so everyone else could keep theirs. He blinked, stunned. And you thought I'd keep doing that forever. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Behind her, the kids were fully melting down, crying, yelling, demanding pancakes. Leah covered her ears, groaning. Brian paced in circles, muttering about how unbelievable this all was. She looked at me the way someone looks at an object they suddenly realize doesn't belong to them. Finally, she whispered, Please, don't do this. We're counting on you. I shook my head slowly. No, Mom. You're depending on me. There's a difference. Her voice cracked. But your flight, where are you even going? Away, I said. To rest. To breathe. To exist without being treated like unpaid labor. Her face twisted, not in sadness but in panic. But we'll lose money. There was the truth. Not we'll miss you. Not please stay because we love you. Not even we were wrong. Just fear of financial inconvenience. I tilted my head slightly. Then maybe next time you'll treat me like family, not a resource. Mom's shoulders collapsed as if the foundation holding her up was finally cracking. She whispered again, softer this time. No, no way. But it was too late. I was already gone. Not out the door yet, but gone from the role they'd trapped me in. And for the first time in my life, felt good. The moment Mom's whisper faded, a different kind of chaos began. One that had nothing to do with kids running wild and everything to do with adults losing control. Brian was the first to erupt. He stormed toward me, voice cracking from disbelief. You're being selfish. Seriously, you're just going to ditch us? Ditch your own family? I didn't flinch. You mean the way you were about to ditch your own kids for 6 days? His mouth hung open. No comeback. Just the sting of hearing his own logic turned against him. Leah jumped in next, eyes wide and frantic. You don't understand how exhausted we are. Parenting is hard. We just needed a break. I nodded. I understand parenting is hard. What I don't understand is why your break requires my unpaid labor. Her jaw tightened. Unpaid? Oh, please don't be dramatic. Do you plan to pay me? I asked calmly. Silence. Even the kids, whining seconds earlier, paused to watch the adults crumble. Leah swallowed. We thought you'd be willing to help because it's the holidays. Because it's convenient, I corrected. Brian scoffed loudly. Wow. So this is who you really are, huh? I'm grateful. After we flew you out here. I cut him off. You flew me out to work. Not to celebrate. Mom stepped forward then, eyes shiny but not with tears. More like desperation. Sweetheart, we didn't mean to make you feel used. You're just reliable. You always have been. Reliable, I repeated softly. Funny how that word only ever applies when you need something. Her expression faltered. We're not bad people. We needed you. And you never asked, I said. Not once. A beat of silence passed, thick, heavy, filled with the weight of truth. Then the blame storm arrived. Brian threw his hands up. This whole thing is ridiculous. You're overreacting. It's 1 week. 1 week of my life, I said. 1 week of your responsibilities. 1 week of lies to get me here. Mom pressed her fingers to her temples. Why are you ruining the holiday? Why no? Why like this? I exhaled slowly. Because this is the first holiday where I finally realized I don't owe you my sanity. Their faces shifted, panic, disbelief, guilt, frustration, cycling through like a broken slideshow. I picked up my backpack. I'm leaving. I hope you figure things out. I really do. But I'm not your solution anymore. Mom whispered something that sounded like my name. Brian cursed under his breath. Leah shook her head in disbelief. But their reactions didn't matter. For the first time ever. I chose me. And I wasn't going back. I walked toward the front door slowly, purposefully, feeling every pair of eyes glued to my back. The house, still buzzing with tension, seemed to hold its breath. I half expected someone to block the doorway, to grab my arm, to force me back into the role they'd written for me since childhood. But no one moved. Not at first. The kids were the only ones who reacted with pure emotion. The youngest ran toward me, clinging to my leg. Auntie, don't go. Don't go. His tiny voice cracked, confused and scared. My heart squeezed painfully. I knelt down, brushing his hair gently. I love you, I whispered. But I have to go do something important. More important than us? He sniffled. I smiled softly. More important for me. Kids understand truth better than adults sometimes. He nodded slowly, letting go, though tears still clung to his eyelashes. I stood, lifting the strap of my backpack onto my shoulder again. That's when Brian finally snapped out of his shock and lunged forward. You can't just leave. You're abandoning everyone. I didn't even turn fully toward him. No, Brian. I'm leaving because you expected me to abandon myself. He growled something under his breath, but Leah grabbed his arm, not out of compassion for me, but because she realized yelling wouldn't fix anything. Mom was the last one to speak. Her voice didn't sound angry anymore. Sounded old. Please, she whispered. Just stay. We'll talk about this after the trip. I shook my head slowly. That's exactly the problem. After the trip. After your plans. After your convenience. She bit her lip, trembling. We didn't mean to hurt you. I know, I said gently. But you did. I opened the door. The cold winter air rushed in, sharp and refreshing, like the world itself was telling me I'd made the right choice. Behind me the kids cried. Brian cursed. Leah muttered, "Unbelievable." Mom whispered my name again, softer this time, as if saying it quietly could pull me back. But nothing could. Not anymore. I stepped outside, letting the door close behind me. The sound of it, soft but final, felt like a release. In the driveway, the sky was still dark, early morning stars fading slowly as dawn approached. My pre-scheduled ride pulled up exactly on time. The driver rolled down the window. "Airport." I nodded. "Airport." As I slid into the car, I took one last look at the house and realized something important. For years that place felt like a weight. Now as I left it behind, it finally felt like freedom. The airport felt like another planet compared to the chaos I'd just left behind. Everything was calm, soft announcements, rolling suitcases, the quiet hum of early travelers. No shouting. No demands. No guilt waiting to be thrown like a net around my shoulders. Just space. I checked in, past security, and sat by my gate with a cup of coffee I didn't even want. Just because I could. Just because it felt good to make a decision for myself. The sun was rising through the glass wall, painting everything gold. For the first time in years, that light didn't feel heavy. Felt like permission. But the peace didn't last long. My phone buzzed before my flight even started boarding. "Mom, please come back. We can figure this out." Then another. "Brian, Mom is freaking out. The kids are hysterical. Get back now." Then another. "Leah, this is so inconsiderate. You ruined everything." I stared at the screen, sipping my coffee slowly. A few months ago, messages like that would have shattered me. I would have apologized for things that weren't my fault. I would have sprinted home to make everything better. But now, I felt calm. Untangled. Still, curiosity tugged at me. I opened the family group chat, even though I knew I shouldn't, just in time to see the meltdown unfolding in real time. "Brian, the kids won't stop crying." "Leah, the car is packed but we can't leave like this." "Mom, we may lose the hotel deposit. Do something. Do something. Do something. Do something." That was always the unspoken command they threw at me. But not today. My boarding group was called and I silenced my phone, not just the ringtone but the guilt. The pressure. The expectations. I let all of it slide off me like a coat I wasn't wearing anymore. As the plane rose into the sky, a strange quiet settled over me, deeper than silence, more like healing. I didn't know where my family would end up going that morning. Whether they made their flight. Whether they went on the trip at all. But part of me suspected they didn't. Because for the first time they were forced to face their lives without leaning on me. Hours later, after I landed and checked into a small hotel overlooking the ocean, I glanced at my phone again. There were more missed calls, more messages, more guilt attempts. I didn't open a single one. Not out of spite, but out of peace. The kind of peace that comes from breaking a cycle. Even if the people trapped in it don't understand yet. The ocean outside my hotel balcony moved like a living thing. Slow, steady, powerful. Waves rolled in and out in perfect rhythm, nothing forced, nothing rushed. For the first time in what felt like my entire life, I matched that rhythm. My breath deepened. My shoulders lowered. My mind stopped racing. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't running. I was resting. Truly resting. I lay on the lounge chair, wrapped in a soft blanket, when my phone buzzed for the 100th time that day. I ignored it. But then another message arrived. This time from Mom's number. Not in anger or panic. But in something that startled me more than shouting ever had. Silence. A single line. No punctuation. No commands. "Mom, where did we go wrong with you?" I stared at it for a long moment. Not hurt. Not angry. Just reflective. Where did they go wrong? They didn't listen. They didn't value. They didn't ask. And they certainly didn't see me as someone with a life outside their needs. But I also knew something important. I had allowed it for far too long. And now I was rewriting the ending. So I sat up, pulled the blanket tighter around my shoulders, and typed the message that had been forming inside me ever since I boarded the plane. "Me, you didn't go wrong. You just stopped seeing me as a person. I came home for family. You wanted a babysitter. I'm not doing that anymore." I hit send before I could overthink it. Mom read it instantly. The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, appeared again, then vanished completely. No reply. Not anger. Not accusations. Just quiet. And for the first time that quiet didn't feel like loss. It felt like space. My phone vibrated again. Brian this time. A long paragraph of blame. How I ruined their plans, how they missed their flight, how the kids were a mess, how they couldn't believe I did this to them. I didn't respond. I didn't even finish reading. Because the truth finally landed in my chest with gentle, undeniable clarity. Their reaction had nothing to do with love. It had everything to do with dependency. And I had finally broken the dependency. I turned off my phone completely and set it on the bedside table. Then I stepped outside onto the balcony again, letting the ocean breeze wash over me. I wasn't alone. I wasn't abandoned. I wasn't guilty. I was free. Free from a role I never chose. Free from expectations that suffocated me. Free from being the person everyone leaned on but never saw. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, I whispered something I'd never said out loud before. Something that felt like a beginning instead of an ending. I choose me now. And this time nothing and no one would take that away.